Broadcasting from Boston, Massachusetts, the Smart Cities podcast is the only podcast dedicated to all things smart cities. The podcast is the creation of ARC Advisory Group's Smart City practice. ARC advises leading companies, municipalities, and governments on technology trends and market dynamics that affect their business and quality of life in their cities. To engage further, please like and share our podcast or reach out directly on Twitter at Smart City Viewpoints or on our website at www.arcweb.com/industries/smart-cities.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the ARC Advisory Group Smart Cities podcast. I'm Eddie Fidler. I'm a transport analyst here at ARC, and so I'm happy to be joined today by Angela Hultberg. She's the head of sustainable mobility at Ingka Group, but most of us know them as Ikea Group. So Angela, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's our pleasure. So maybe I can have you start by just telling us a little bit about your personal professional background.
Sure. I've been with IKEA for roughly 6 years, I think now, 6 or 7. Time flies. And I've been working mostly with transport and logistics in different ways and what we call customer fulfillment. And then I ended up in sustainability, where I focus a lot on mobility, I guess. I'm the head of sustainable mobility, like you mentioned. So basically my job is to make sure that everything that moves within Ingka moves in a sustainable way. My background, though, is not as straightforward. I actually started out as a tax lawyer at PwC. That was my very first job after uni. So it was a bit of a bumpy ride to get here, but now I'm here. I'm very happy about it.
That is very interesting, to say the least. Not going to go into it, but that is not what I expected.
That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah,
really.
that'll be the sequel to this.
It just teaches you that life can take some twists and turns. But I honestly think it's a good thing, because I think we need people with a strong business background in sustainability, and I think we need sustainability people in business. So, as far as I see it, it's a really good thing to change it up every once in a while and bring your knowledge and your, everything into a new area and make use of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. You don't want sustainability to be, a pipe dream and for hippies and tree huggers, right? It's good business. And
it is good business.
When it's good business, it's gonna take off, which is what we need. So maybe you can speak to that angle for a second. So why is sustainability important to Ingka Group, IKEA Group? How did your role come about?
So, the IKEA vision is and has always been, we've been around for 75 plus years now, and it's always been to create a better everyday life for the many people. And if we want to do that, then obviously sustainability needs to be a big part of that. So the sustainability agenda in our company is huge. And we work on many different topics with many different things, everything from renewable energy, where we, invest in energy production. We reduce energy consumption in all our operations, things like that. We actually own more wind turbines than we do stores at this point. And we just reached our target of producing more renewable energy than we consume. So things are going well in that department. But then we also work so much with forestry, securing good working conditions in the supply chain. We work a lot with solar panels, really everything. And then there's my focus area, which is mobility. And it's pretty simple, really. If you want to create a better everyday life for the many people, being able to breathe air that is not toxic is a pretty basic need, right? So just looking at urban cities today. And we know more and more people are moving into urban areas. And we look at the congestion and we look at the air pollution and we look at the noise pollution. Cities are becoming really unhealthy and unsustainable. And we don't want to contribute to that. We want to, find better ways of doing things so we can support people and help people have a better life, not doing the opposite. So it was very clear to us that we need to change our ways of working, especially with online sales growing so much. That means we do more and more delivery services, not only us as IKEA, but all companies doing more and more deliveries into city centers. And it just causes a lot of, congestion, pollution, and noise. So we need to find better ways so we don't contribute to that. And that was sort of the starting point for us, looking at, okay, how can we do this better? And then we realized quickly that mobility touches on so much of what we do. And there's so many things we need to do. It's not just the one project.
So, well, yeah, that's totally right. Mobility is broad and touches everything from the environment and health to convenience to noise to the core of the business.
Yeah, it does. But not only that, because it's also a precondition almost for how we have built society today, right? So the cities, 100 years back, not even that, less than 100 years back, you could reach everything you needed within a 30-minute walk normally, right? You had your workplace within 30 minutes, you had your butcher, you had your doctor, everything was pretty close by. But that's not what the cities look like today. Because today we have all, hospitals, medical is in one area, you have big shopping areas, you have a financial areas, you have work area. It's all little islands, right, with different focuses, and you need to be able to move around to access them. And so when we started looking at mobility, we saw quickly that, okay, this is how we commute to work. We have 160,000 coworkers going to work every day, and transportation is the second biggest cost for most households. So we know that it's super important to all our employees, how they get to work. It's how we travel as being a global company. There is a lot of traveling. How do we do that? It's in what we source. It's in what we operate with our last mile delivery services, things like that, the fleet we own ourselves, the services we offer. So when we started, you scratch the surface and you find out there's a lot that goes into it. So we quickly realized that this was not just a project for home delivery specifically, but rather something that the entire company needs to work with in one way or another.
Okay, so and you in your role, you touch on all those different aspects.
Yeah. So like I said, my job is to make sure that everything that moves within our company moves in a sustainable way. And it doesn't really matter if it's goods, coworkers, or customers. And then also to that comes, of course, whatever enables that sustainable movement. So for instance, charging infrastructure. So what we did was basically to say, okay, we need some targets so we know what we're doing. So we set basically 4 targets to really get the work going. One was we said that by 2020, which is next year, we will provide access to EV charging stations at all our touch points. So basically, where we have parking space, we should also have EV charging for customers and coworkers. Mm-hmm. So that was our first. And then we said that we will aim for having 100% of our customer deliveries and services using electric vehicles or other zero emission solutions by 2025. So basically zero emission deliveries by then.
Okay. So let's just jump on that one for now. Yeah. What does that look like? How big is your delivery fleet? How many deliveries do you guys do in a year?
So this is the thing. We don't have a delivery fleet. We work with service providers for this. So all our deliveries are outsourced today. So this is something we need to do together with our service providers and really finding the ones that wants to do this with us, that share our vision of the future. And it's very ambitious, I think, and it will require a lot of work. So we said, instead 2025, it's not that far away, to be honest, but in IKEA terms, it's still a long-term goal. So we said that, okay, we'll take 5 cities and just go all in. So we'll be 100% within 2 years. So we said this 2018, so we'll be done by 2020. And
what were the cities?
So the cities were Shanghai, Paris, Amsterdam, New York, and Los Angeles. And what we hoped with those cities is that, okay, we'll find a few different ways of achieving that, and we'll learn a lot, and we'll probably fail in some aspect, and then we learn even more. But this should give us a few different ways of achieving this, because one thing is very clear. It's not going to be as easy as just pulling out combustion engines and replacing them with electric engines. I wish it was that simple. It's definitely not going to be that.
Right.
So we need to find different ways of doing last mile delivery in sustainable ways. So, we just got going really. And now Shanghai is actually already done. And we're obviously super happy about that. We have an amazing team working on this in China. But the fact that we can take one of the biggest cities in the world and make it completely electric in less than a year, that shows that this can be done. It's not something we will do in the near future. It's something that we're doing right now. So we know that already in the first year, we'll pull 1,000 tons of CO2. That's 1,000 tons less of pollution. And obviously Shanghai being a very polluted city, it just feels extra good that that's where we managed to do that the fastest.
So what did that look like? You partnered with your local delivery firm, and you enticed them to go electric for the part of their fleet that deals with your deliveries, or what did you actually do?
Yeah, so what we did, for sure, we need service providers that, like I said, share our vision and wants to go on this journey with us, because it will require a change in ways of working, investment, things like that. So we partner up with one of our service providers. We told them, this is what we want to do. They said, this is fantastic. We want to do this with you. And we'll just go on this journey together. But then we also teamed up with an EV sharing platform, which was completely new to us. Of course, we've never worked with EV sharing platform. To be fair, there are no EV sharing platforms in most of our markets. But what it was is basically a company that could give us access to more charging infrastructure. So we built part of the infrastructure we needed ourselves at our facilities, but they could also give us access to other charging infrastructure networks. And also they could deliver the vehicles to our service provider and lease them to our service provider much, much faster. So by working with this company in completely new ways, we managed to pull months out of the project because we didn't actually have to wait for the vehicles. So instead of being just us and our service provider, we're now a triangle with everyone working together towards the same goal. So that's why it was so quick, but also because we dared to challenge the current ways of working, and we really looked at, what do we bring to the table? It's one thing to just go out and tell all your service provider that by 2025 we will be 100% electric. So if you're not offering us electric capacity by then, it's over. But that's just pushing your ambition on someone else, really. So here we also had to say, okay, what do we bring to the table? Do we need to change the way we source these services? Do we need to offer more? And what is more in that case? And how can we make it easier? Should we co-invest in this? What do we need to do? And what do we expect from them? So that's how those were the kind of discussions we had together with our partners in China.
That's awesome. And you have similar frameworks cooking in your other 4 cities?
We do, similar in the aspect that it's going to take a lot of collaboration and new ways of working. You know, we can sit at Ikea and talk about electric deliveries until we're blue in the face, but we cannot do this in isolation. So without our partners, it just won't happen. That said, we try to be, quite pushy. So what we did in China, we cannot just copy paste onto Paris or Amsterdam or New York. And we sort of realized that going into it, right? We said that we wanted to find different ways because what we did in Shanghai, we can probably do in Beijing, and Shenzhen and big cities across China, maybe even other countries in Asia. But we have to do it differently in Paris. So we're looking a lot in Paris being a very different kind of city at new ways of working. So how can we make sure that the changes we do now are good not only from a sustainability perspective, but from a customer perspective as well? So if we're going to change everything anyway, we should change it in a way that reduce emissions, of course, but also, preferably increase customer convenience, reduce our costs, things like that, be more efficient, higher quality. Just like take this opportunity to really make all the changes you need to see. So we're looking at, for instance, to avoid congestion, can we deliver by barge in Paris? They have a river. Turns out we can. And so now we're doing that. So we can pull up our goods on the river, and then we can dispatch cargo bikes from there instead of more vehicles, or we could even use it as a pickup point. We're also looking at engaging with social entrepreneurs and things like that to see if, could this be an opportunity also for the community to bring in meaningful jobs and things like that. So it's going to be a very different setup in Paris compared to Shanghai, and it's going to be very different in New York and Los Angeles compared to Paris and Amsterdam. So it's about finding the thing that works for each market, really, each country. I wish there was like one silver bullet that we could just scale up across the world, but turns out it's a bit more difficult than that.
Well, every city's different. Every place is different.
They are, but we'll see, some cities are similar, and where we can copy paste or just scale up, we will obviously go for that. But we'll need at least 5 different ways of doing that and then tweak it.
Mm-hmm. The barge idea is awesome. Never heard about that one. That's great. So just for a level of scale, how many deliveries does Ikea or Ingka do in a year? And obviously it's growing, but...
It is growing a lot. It actually grew by 30% last year alone, because we're still in the process of rolling out our online offer. So our online sales are growing very, very fast. And with online sales comes deliveries, of course. So I don't actually have the newest numbers for delivery in. We're waiting for our annual report. But if you look at a city like Shanghai, for instance, it does around 20,000 deliveries every month. And that, just as an example. So I wouldn't be able to say like the global number of deliveries today, because I know it's changed so much from last year, but it's growing or exploding even.
Wow. So globally, that's on the order of millions of trips, and that's growing dramatically.
Yes.
Wow. Do you guys deliver those meatballs as well, or no?
Not yet. Let me put it that way.
Okay. Well, I hope they come to me sustainably.
Well, I know you could also just go for the veggie ball these days. It doesn't have to be a meatball anymore. It can be a veggie ball or even a veggie hot dog.
So you guys have those too? Yeah, speaking of sustainability, we won't get into agriculture or industry or home heating and all that, but there's a lot of aspects to it. Yeah. So your delivery, the delivery piece is huge for you guys, and you're working quickly to make that green. What have been some of the kind of barriers to the delivery piece? And I do want to ask you about the coworker and the commuting aspect of it too, but while we're on delivery, what's been in your way?
Well, I mean, we face the same challenges and barriers that everyone else who wants to see this happen does. And we usually talk about availability of electric vehicles for commercial purposes. The lack of availability of these vehicles. Sometimes the performance of the electric vehicles, they are not perfect yet, that's for sure. Charging infrastructure is a big barrier. There's not enough of it. It's expensive. And we have to figure out like load balancing and see if our facilities can handle the increased energy consumption. And then the initial investment, of course, usually referenced as high cost. Now, we think that this is an investment and not a cost. So we do intend to see a return of invest as well. But the initial investment is quite high, and it's definitely keeping companies from transforming. So these are the standard ones that we talk about a lot. But I think a huge barrier too is, of course, the mindset. We still face a lot of the time companies saying that, this will happen. We will, of course, have electric deliveries, just as we will have autonomous deliveries, and we will have all this amazing technology. But they always talk about it like it's something that's gonna happen, whereas we're in the position that this is happening. So there's a huge part of change management to happen here to get everyone on board that we need to do this now. We need the vehicles now. We need the charging infrastructure now. And it's not going to happen automatically just because time goes by. Somebody actually needs to make it happen. So that's a huge part to actually get people into action mode and say that we've been talking about this for some time now, and that's great, but now we need to really take action and show that action speaks louder than words. And another thing is, of course, the mindset of the people who actually have to drive these trucks and own these trucks, because it is new technology and they don't always trust it because they haven't tried it. So it's also about getting that very first truck rolling in every market, because if it's one thing we've learned is that the first few trucks or vans are the hardest, because range anxiety is very real and they don't trust it when it's warm and they don't trust it when it's cold and they want to see it perform. But as soon as we get those first few trucks rolling, then that sort of solves itself. So today we've deployed electric vehicles in last mile in 14 of our 30 markets. And we're trying to move fast just to get those first trucks out there, because change management and hesitation is a huge problem. People are just waiting and nothing's going to happen while everyone just sits and wait for someone else to do it.
So why do you see now is the time to make that move? Because these problems have been here for a while. EVs have somewhat been around for a little while now. What's changed in your view this last year or two that you chose to dive into it and you think we should all be diving into this?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's clear that we need to do it just to be a responsible retailer. Again, if you look at the air pollution and the congestion and the noise pollution of the cities, it's getting worse and worse, and we can't just sit and watch it get even worse and not even try to do something about it. But then let's be very clear. The technology on the market today and the vehicles on the market today might not be perfect, but they're definitely good enough to get going. They're definitely good enough to deploy, find out what works and what doesn't work, and then work to make it better. So the time really is now. There's no reason, at least, to wait, because it's good enough what we have today. And if we're going to wait for a perfect solution, then, we can wait for forever, basically. It's definitely going to be too late to change. But we also see local policymakers waking up to this reality that the cities they are in charge of are becoming very unsustainable. So we see now with cities, especially across Europe, talking about ultra low emission zones, even fossil fuel bans. And this is, of course, a huge business risk for us as well. If we cannot access our customers' front doors because of bans, then we don't have a delivery offer, and then we don't have online sales. So this is also about securing future business and mitigating what we see as a huge business risk. If I cannot reach certain zip codes in Amsterdam, then I'm going to lose those sales. And that is going to cost me a lot more than to invest in electric vehicles today.
Right. So it's a mix of the tech has been improving, though it's not perfect yet, with prices going down, performance going up, the need becoming just so clear in terms of people costs and environmental costs. The regulation is heading that way. And so if it's a market where you're not already there, there's a chance that it's going to be there in 5, 10, 15 years. And your company's going to have to switch eventually.
Yes.
So you may as well be at the forefront. But then, and it's also just the right thing to do. But beyond that, can you speak to the potential, I don't know, the more direct economic benefits? Like, are the folks you're working with already seeing performance improvements, lower fuel costs, more convenience for their drivers, things like that? Are those effects clear yet at all, or not yet?
I mean, we're still in the beginning of this journey, and so we have a lot of learnings to evaluate moving forward. But the initial investment today is quite high, so it will depend also market for market what kind of subsidies can we get, or are there grants or things like that. But of course, fuel is much cheaper for an electric vehicle than a fossil fuel vehicle, and maintenance cost is lower because maintenance of an electric vehicle is, there's not that many moving parts compared to a combustion engine.
Right.
So we know that those two costs will be significantly lower and probably low enough to get us that initial investment back. Now, in some markets, this will go quite quickly, like in China, where we see return of invest happening within 2 years, basically. And in some markets, it's going to take a bit longer. And then you have to be there for, as a longer commitment. So we might not see it until 8 years, but still there is a return of invest on it. And then as these tolls come into play, and as we have to pay more for congestion or for polluting, then of course the business case gets better and better. And at the same time, the cost of the vehicles goes down. So I think the business case will only get better from here. But already today, of course, there is a business case. Ikea is a company. We're not an NGO. So of course, we see that this is something that will benefit both our customers, the environment, but also our business.
And that's absolutely key to actually getting things done and having things move in that direction. And I'll also add, you mentioned the energy and the maintenance, and you mentioned that you're obviously doing the delivery piece. You're focusing on urban areas naturally. There's a really interesting angle here where EVs are so particularly suited for urban areas based on the start and stop, the idling, the regen braking, the noise, and more softer factors too. Like we know in a lot of cities, there's a strong union presence and very high wages. So you think about the mechanics that are hired by those logistics companies to maintain their vehicles. The labor costs are through the roof for a mechanic's hour. And so if you're literally using half, your vehicles are down half the time, it's not only more uptime, but it's just a lot less money on then maintenance, which is astronomically expensive in all these markets you're working in. So there's all these different kind of rippling benefits that only become clear with time.
Really is, and you're absolutely right in everything you say. But then there's one more thing. If we look at Europe specifically, but also parts of North America, there is a driver shortage, and we have a hard time finding all the drivers we need. Now, if I can offer a better working environment where it's quiet, you don't sit in constant noise for 8 or 9 hours a day, then of course that can be a factor. That can make a driver choose to work for a company with electric vehicles instead of without, because it's just a better environment for them. And if you look also, which I think is super exciting, if you look at the development of new electric vehicles, because in that market space, we see a lot of up and coming companies, right? Designing new trucks and building new trucks from a blank piece of paper rather than 50 years of building conventional trucks. And what we see for some of these companies, they really have a driver-centric focus, right? So they've been thinking about how can we make the truck better for the driver so that any company who buys our truck will be able to attract drivers more than the ones who don't. And, just looking at real, when you see it, you feel like, why is not everyone doing this? But place the driver in the middle of the cabin, have sliding doors so that the driver can get out curbside and doesn't always have to open a door out in traffic on the street and climb down. Just two really small examples. But it's that type of thing, that type of development that we see in electric vehicles that we don't always see in the more conventional vehicles. So I think the working environment for drivers will also sort of push for this change even faster.
Right. Could you imagine driving a long haul or even a big diesel van for 9 hours of shaking vibration and noise and fumes and smell?
I can. I've done it. So yeah, I can absolutely imagine that. And, it's not great. I can't imagine doing that every day, actually. Or I can, because, if it's a job and it's not a bad job. But if I could choose between doing it in that noise and doing it in a quiet environment, I know exactly which one I'd choose.
Right. And hopefully eventually those drivers will be one of the voices that is pushing for this. And I think it goes beyond the comfort. It's even, if you're a young person and you're considering going into, long haul trucking or any kind of trucking and logistics, that there's going to be a lot of changes in the transportation space during your lifetime and your career. And maybe one day drivers will be redundant, but that's decades out. You want to be familiar with and training on new technology. So that means electric. You'll just be more viable in your career as a young driver. So these things just keep kind of expanding and expanding when you look at the different benefits here. And I think it also just ties into the fact that this isn't just a technological change, it's a full mindset change. It's human-centric, it's kind of more just life-centric, and then that interplays with the economics very favorably.
I know, and it's not only the last mile industry that is changing, right? So now we've focused a lot on last mile and delivery, but if we look at the more people centric mobility, we see huge changes. So another one of the targets we set was actually that by 2030, we will reduce relative emissions coming from coworker and customer travel to our locations by 50%. And what we see already today, look at mobility in the inner cities and how much they've changed in the last few years with car sharing services, with different platforms where you book a ride, with micro mobility, with e-scooters and sharing bikes, even electric bike sharing options. We can see all of these new things. And what it is that people are starting to view mobility in a very different way. Because urbanization is a strong trend. More and more people move into the city centers, and it's expensive to live in the city center. So we know when we look at millennials and younger, they don't prioritize owning a car. And why would they? It's super expensive. Everything they need is in the city center where they live. And if it's not there, they can probably get it using their phone, right? So why would they need a car? They don't even get driver's license at the same extent anymore. But where is IKEA usually located? Outside of the city center. So this is becoming a problem for us as a business, because we now see that the number one reason you're not an IKEA customer is accessibility. So it's something we need to work with. We need to come into the cities to meet our customers, but we also need to help our customers come out to IKEA in convenient and sustainable ways. And there's so much happening in this space. And it's really, exciting times, because nobody really knows what mobility will look like in the cities in 10 years even. And there's so much going on with micromobility, smart traffic lights, everything connected. If we can have it more data driven to avoid congestion, we can have mobility as a service solutions. There's so many things ongoing. And it's anyone guess what will stick and what won't. But it's definitely an exciting time to be working in this area. But this is very consumer driven, right? This is how people view mobility. And like we said in the beginning, mobility is a prerequisite for how we have built our cities today. And it's going to be real interesting to see how different companies sort of meet the customer expectations, because I think customer expectations are changing faster than many companies can adjust and meet these expectations. So exciting times for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it does make sense that the big corporates are often a little bit slower, because like you said, not to single out IKEA, obviously you guys are doing great in this field. But a big company like you has over 100,000 employees, 75 years old, and it's really challenging to move these behemoth companies, for them to shift towards changing tastes and changing needs. But so how are you guys? So what are you doing in the personal mobility space? How are you helping people get out to your stores?
Yeah. So first of all, we wanted to start focusing a lot on our coworkers. Like I said, we have probably 166,000 coworkers across the world. So if we see that IKEA locations are usually outside of the city centers, we know that transportation is the second biggest cost to most households in most of our markets, then we know that this is something we need to do for our coworkers if we want to continue to be a good employee or employer. So what we're doing now is to say, okay, how can we enable and inspire and facilitate our coworkers to travel in more sustainable ways? Obviously, we always have to make sure that you can access us by public transportation. That's a given. We need to make sure that is a okay option for everyone to use. And then we have so many examples from our markets, and maybe too many to mention all here, but it's everything from commuter applications, which we actually want to, that we're actually going to now pilot at a bigger scale, but enabling coworkers to travel together. So if we're 4 in one car, instead of everyone going one by one in their car, then we cut emissions by 75%. And we also cut the cost for the individual by 75%. So that would be great. We have shuttle buses in some markets. We do actually have micro-mobility options at some of our stores and offices. We work a lot with securing good bike lanes and having even bike repair services at our facilities and stuff like that. And we're looking a lot at mobility as a service solutions too, to see how and what we could use to get our customers back and forth to the store. So there's a variety of things ongoing. And I think what we need to do now, because we don't know about the future, so what we need to do is try. So we're piloting all these things, and we know not all of them will be successful. Some of them will fail, and that's great, because then we've learned a few lessons that we can use as we move forward. But some of these things will really be successful, and we can scale them up, and it will help us to grow as a company.
So that's everything from your coworker facing mobility to getting your customers out to you. You're trying everything from helping them go green with EV charging to carpooling applications to mobility services to even functioning in the broader political sphere to try to get better bike lanes and things like that. So you're looking at this from a whole lot of angles.
There are no quick fixes. You need to address a problem from many angles always if you want to find the best solution. But so and we're not doing all of this at all our stores right now. Of course, there are markets like in Oslo, we have a bus. So you take the Ikea bus if you want to go to Ikea, and that works for both customers and coworkers. But we don't have that in every market, of course, but it works well for them. And in other areas, you try other things. And then, of course, we always try to promote public transportation, and for our coworkers in most markets to also subsidize that. So, but we will find the ones that we think can work on a bigger scale, and we will scale up and deploy. Like I said, just deploy it and then work to make it better. But we are very much still in the beginning of our journey here. So we have lots to learn, and probably we'll learn the most from our customers, of course, because if we listen, they will tell us what their needs are. And then we find the solutions for their problems rather than sitting at an office in Sweden and trying to think of things. It's easier just to ask the customers what they want.
That's awesome. That's such a cool approach. You do have to give up some control to do that, to listen instead of to kind of dictate. But I think that's
the end result is obviously, if we're trying to do something good for our customers, then what better source than our customers? And what we've learned in our 75 years is that what is good for our customers is usually very good for us.
I love to hear that. Okay, so we've covered your various initiatives for sustainable mobility, why it's important, some of the barriers around that. Maybe we can just close with any sort of last or closing thoughts that you have about the whole space broadly, or just things you want to see and things you can't wait to see, what you think might happen. And
I think what we'll see is more and more collaboration in new ways. So I think we'll see different types of partnerships from what we're used to, and maybe bigger partnerships as well. And I'm really excited to just see different pilots, different projects, different types of companies coming out, because what I can see from us, it's no longer a topic between Ikea and a service provider. Now we're talking to entrepreneurs, we're talking to governments, we're talking to NGOs, to startups, to customers, to other brands, to politicians, everyone. And I think this is what we need. If we want to build a sustainable future where people can be happy and healthy, we need to involve a lot more people. And then we need to find the solutions that are good for sustainability, for people, and for business. And I am convinced that model exists, because that's the model we're pushing forward. But I think the number one thing we have to do today is to just get going. Just take the best available option you can find, deploy it, and then work to make it better. Don't wait for perfect solutions. Don't wait in general. Just find the best option and go with it. And then we can tweak it and fix it as we go.
Well, Angela, covering the mobility space as closely as we do here, this is just thrilling to hear. It's really exciting. And we wish you guys the best. We hope you achieve all your goals, that you fail a lot right away, you learn a lot, and you do what you want to do. We'll be watching closely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, fun. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll have you back, and we'll be talking soon.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
Thanks. You too.
Broadcasting from Boston, Massachusetts, the Smart Cities podcast is the only podcast dedicated to all things smart cities. The podcast is the creation of ARC Advisory Group's Smart City practice. ARC advises leading companies, municipalities, and governments on technology trends and market dynamics that affect their business and quality of life in their cities. To engage further, please like and share our podcast or reach out directly on Twitter at Smart City Viewpoints or on our website at www.arcweb.com/industries/smart-cities.